Welcome back, America. Critical race theory, diversity, equity, inclusion, or DEI, ESG, environmental, social, corporate governance. We're surrounded by this alphabet soup. What does it mean? Where does it come from? How is it going to affect our lives if it isn't confronted? Nobody better than Mike Gonzalez of the Heritage Foundation. He's written a fantastic book, by the way, BLM, The Making of a New Marxist Revolution. So, Mike, what exactly is going on here?
I'll tell you what I think is going on. I think that in 2020, the administrators of our cultural institutions decided to throw in the towel and accept and join the campaign for the complete transformation of America. I think they may have done so unwittingly, but when they accept that America is systemically and institutionally and structurally racist, which they did, they embraced that, they didn't think through to the consequences. The consequences of that is that if all those things are true, then ergo, all the institutions and the structures and the system, which is just a Greek word for the way everything works, then all of that has to be thrown out and replaced with something else. That's the Marxist dream. And the people who should have known better, the administrators of our cultural institutions, accepted this in 2020 for reasons you and I can go into. Everyday Americans did not. They're fighting back. That, in a nutshell, is how I see it, Mark.
Well, what I call this ruling class now has embraced it. The Biden administration is pushing it throughout every single government entity by executive order. You see these corporatists are embracing it. They're imposing it on HR and these other areas. Now you have diversity, equity, and inclusion trainers and monitors and officers and so forth. Are these really enforcers to make sure that this sort of thing takes place in all these institutions?
What they are is they're party commissars. They're there to enforce a political line. We should call it for what it is. I think that Governor DeSantis and Governor Youngkin and now Governor Sanders, who practically devoted her entire rebuttal on the State of the Union speech to this issue, I think they're fighting back. So what is happening, first of all, I think we should make it very clear that diversity, equity, and inclusion in the reigning orthodoxy that we have today mean the opposite of what those words used to mean to you and me when we were growing up in the 70s. Diversity is a rigidly enforced uniformity of views. It's violative of the First Amendment. Equity is the worst. Equity is the functional opposite of equality. It means that the government and the private sector must treat Americans differently according to the categories that they have been put into. Our Vice President Kamala Harris is very, very explicit on this. And inclusion is exclusive. It excludes, it makes illegal a language that the left does not like. It's language codes. So that's the reason why people like you and me are against it, and we're exposing it for what it is, and the American people are seeing it quite clearly.
So, Mike Gonzalez, as I take this is a not-so-subtle war on the civil society, on the American system, on capitalism, on our constitutional system. And it seems to me it's embraced by an awful lot of the media and, I might add, political leaders. Am I wrong about that?
The media is completely complicit in this. The media says things that it is its job to cover for what is taking place. The media knows what is taking place. What is at stake here is exactly what you said, a complete totalizing transformation, and because it attempts to complete everything, it's total, it leads directly to totalitarianism, because if you politicize everything, the total, you have totalitarianism. I have lived under, I know what it is. So I think that if Americans, if your viewers who are very smart, take anything out of this, is that it is the system, the American system, that is at stake. People want to transform it. America is a good country. Can it be improved? Of course it can, but it's pretty good here. I tell you, Mark, I was a foreign correspondent. I have lived at least a year in 7 countries. I can compare and contrast. We should think twice before we transform America.
Well, this transformation of America, it seems to me, to quote Joe Biden, is not from the bottom up and the middle out, whatever that means. It's from the top down. It's being imposed on us by academia. It's being imposed on us by politicians. It's got a voice in the mass media. And you kind of started out the show with this. The people really want nothing to do with this. When they hear about it, they scratch their heads. They think this is the dumbest thing that they've ever heard before. And yet the training, the HR departments, they are enshrining this, are they not?
Yeah, exactly. Whenever I hear that, people say to me, this is just a very small minority. Yeah, actually, it's about 10% of the population that's super woke, right? Guess who else was a very small minority, Mark? The Bolsheviks. The Bolsheviks were a very small minority, and within a matter of months, they completely transformed Russia. Herbert Marcuse, who introduced many of these ideas here in the United States in the 1950s and 60s, he said that himself. He said, change begins with a very small minority that then indoctrinates the majority or suppresses, introduces a repressive tolerance that means a censorship of opposing views. So when people tell you it's only a small minority that believes in this, don't think that it is less dangerous for that reason.
Yeah, well, most revolutions are not led by the majority. They're led by the minority. There's no question about that. And the ruling class really wants power and iron-fisted control over society, and they can't get that with the Constitution. They can't get that with capitalism. But this really did get incredibly aggressive and broad-based, even though I know the foundation was building over a couple of decades. As you say, in 2020, the summer of 2020, the riots and so forth, and then all of a sudden, this is out in the open in elementary schools, in colleges and universities where it really got its start, on television and all the rest. When we come back, Mike Gonzalez, why is that the case? Why is it the last 2 or 3 years where this thing has really exploded onto the cultural scene? We'll be right back.